Welcome to another episode of the Information Addicts Podcast. My name's Cassidy. I'm an information addict, and this is my podcast where I explore information, ideas, and beliefs and try to do things more responsibly. This is my first official video back for the podcast. I've been gone for a little while. I did some traveling around Europe, and then I had to actually come back to the US for a little while. So as you can tell, things are a little different, and the setup's a little wild and loose today. But I wanted to record this video because I had something on my mind, and I thought it would be good to kind of work through and share on this platform as a way to kind of preserve it and kind of share with the people who listen who might be going through similar things with this type of year. So today I want to talk about Easter. This year is my first time going through an Easter season as officially Orthodox. I have been exploring Orthodoxy for about 3 years now. So I've gone through 2 Pascha cycles, which is Orthodox Easter. Once as a catechumen, once as just an interested person. And this is my first time as officially Orthodox. And so I've been reflecting a lot on the journey of how I got to this place and sort of how I've been thinking about it as I come through this season with my family who's not Orthodox, and the way it's made me think more about the holiday as a whole and sort of how to navigate that with this different framework. And I know there's a lot of you who actually are not religious or traditionally religious who listen to my videos. And for some of you, you're actually moving away from religion because it's either something that you can't identify with anymore, or you feel like has caused you some pain and you can't be associated with it. And I definitely recognize that. And hopefully in this video, it can give you sort of a bit of perspective and a background of the way I've been thinking about Easter that maybe might be helpful for you as you try to navigate that with family, friends, culture, all that jazz. So before I get too deep into my own thoughts about it all, I kind of want to give a bit of a background on Easter and how it's a little bit different than the Western frame. So first off, they're on different calendars. So I did not know this until I started exploring Orthodoxy, but the Eastern Christian calendar and the Western Christian calendar are different. And we celebrate Christmas at the same time, but we do not celebrate Easter at the same time. They're slightly different, and this year Easter is actually coming a week later than Western Easter. So Catholics and Protestants had their celebration last Sunday, and this Sunday will be the Pascha celebration, which is what the Eastern tradition calls Easter. And so for all of us Eastern Christian folks, we have this time between when everybody else is celebrating Easter where we're still participating in this season and moving our way to Holy Week, which is definitely different coming from a Protestant family where everybody's celebrating Easter, and I celebrate with them. I don't have a problem with that at all. But celebrating with them and then still moving into the season. And for me, it's been kind of a beautiful thing because it gets me to think about the holiday and spark those thoughts before I actually celebrate with the church community and body that I'm a part of. And so it's this other extra layer of sort of building up to that Easter celebration, which is the peak of our feast cycles for the Eastern Church. Growing up Protestant, the 2 major holidays in Christianity were Christmas and Easter, and that's still the same in Orthodoxy. But I found that in the Western frame, it seemed like Christmas was the higher holiday than Easter, even though they both had a reverence to them. It just seemed like more people put an emphasis on the celebration of Christmas and built up to the idea and the celebration of that than they did Easter. And I think part of that's probably just because Christmas is much more cultural in celebration. Although both holidays are particularly religious when you think about them. There's just more people who do the Santa Claus and the gift giving and the holiday seasons than Easter, where it seems like Easter in a modern context is often much more religious than Christmas is. And so it kind of seems like there's that difference. But in the Eastern tradition, Pascha is the highest of high holidays. And so there's a lot of emphasis and celebration and sort of reverence as we move into an Easter season. And for each of the high holidays, they have a 40-day fast where people cut out a bunch of rich foods and sort of limit their diets to prepare ourselves, like our bodies, for this spiritual time and help us focus on sort of the higher things. And yeah, there's a whole there's a lot you could talk about with Easter, but I feel like that's sort of the biggest differences that I felt on sort of the face of it, of the expression and the way those things play themselves in sort of a not superficial, but like surface level view. But I think the biggest thing for me and the difference of what Easter has become for me in the celebration is the shift in the way I think the resurrection and the passion and the things that happened with Jesus on the cross builds itself into the faith and what it means to believe those things. And I'll explain a little bit what I mean by that. So as a Protestant, there was a lot of this belief in the death of Jesus on the cross was this payment for sin. And so he paid a price to save us from the sin that we put out in the world, and he, as the innocent person, took that on so we didn't have to pay that. And from what I understand about Orthodoxy, it's much more about life and death versus sort of atoning for sins, where sin is this act that we participate in the world, and the byproduct of that is death, whether physical or spiritual. And by participation in sin, we continue to breed death and put that out into the world. And this act of Jesus going to the cross was embracing death to ultimately overcome it and bring life and be the symbol of what it is to have life after death. And for a lot of people who are not religious in a traditional way, that sort of idea of death and dying and the cross and afterlife, those things seem kind of foreign and odd, and you can't buy into it, which is fair enough. But I think the way that the Orthodox look at it has given me sort of this different perspective in the way in which I participate it, where it's not just about this idea of overcoming death and having eternal life in a physical form, but there's something about it that talks about death in a spiritual way, where we experience it today and how we can participate in different patterns and group making mechanisms to help us get a better sense of what it is to embrace the things that die to ourselves and the things that are sinful or not right in our world, in order to exchange that for having a life that is more full and more how we were always meant to be. And it really gets me past just feeling sort of a sorrow for the sin that I have put out into the world, and feeling this sense of responsibility to that and to the way that affected whatever path came to this belief that Protestants have for Jesus' acts on the cross, to more of a sort of wider view of trying to understand, what does it mean to truly live? What does it mean to be human? And how do I get outside of my bad paths, these paths that I've participated in that have brought death into the world, to escape death and bring out more life and produce life, not only embracing it and living it, but giving that to others. And for Orthodoxy, a lot of that comes down to this belief in how spiritual disciplines can help teach us something about what it is to be more truly human, and how when starting with our bodies, when it comes to discipline and quenching those passions, it can lead us to the ability to withstand some of the more difficult passions when it comes to the head and the mind, and how those can connect us physically to this sort of spiritual level, so it's not always so disembodied and this sort of otherworldly thing that we're participating in. It connects with the physical that we have right now, and this ability of giving back and being cognizant of charity and how we can give back to others and continue to be generous in our world, which is another way to give life and build communities. And I think the last sort of big thing it really gets me to think about is the community aspect in which we're participating in those things, where it's not so individualistic about how I can do the right thing and what seems right to me, but doing these acts together with a community to participate in something bigger than ourselves and create this group meaning mechanism to help us hone in and celebrate a thing that we believe is true. And it's been difficult in so many ways because it's so foreign to me. It's not a thing that I'm used to. Yet it has given me so much life. It's transformed me in different ways and opened me up to thinking about the world differently. And I do think it's helped me stop being so fearful of doing the wrong thing and being afraid to take a step in the in the fear of putting more sin into the world. But it helps me walk a path where I explore what it means to participate in life and find joy in that. And sometimes that includes doing the hard thing and finding ways to introduce disciplines in your life to harness the passions you don't want and that you don't think are actually helpful for your community and yourself. But there's just sort of a different joy and a little more of an exploration in it all that has been kind of interesting to me. And I do love that I get to celebrate the Western Easter with my family and add that as a part of the ways it sparks me to thinking about how I can participate well in the season that I'm in with my church, and learning how to let that spark these conversations and these thoughts in my head as I continue to walk through to the Holy Week that we have this week and make it to Easter for that final celebration, and then the celebrations that continue after the Easter time. So it's been interesting this first Easter, being that I've spent half my time in the Netherlands celebrating and half my time in the U.S. And I'm kind of grateful that I get the last couple Easter services in the U.S. because it's a little more grounded when it's in your language, and being able to celebrate with the community of people who brought me into the church and supported me through all of that, and gave me a support system to build forward in this faith. And that's been really lovely, but it's always also been very hard to fully embrace the full practice of what it is to celebrate Easter. And I'm trying to give myself grace in that, and learning that, or in reminding myself that I am very new to this participation in faith. In some ways, I'm still a child in it, even though I've spent my whole life being a part of a Christian community. And so that gave me a certain edge in learning what it is to participate well and fit yourself into a group of people as you celebrate a belief system that helps you kind of explain the world and that you think is true. But there's still so much where you're having to relearn a whole culture and dig and ask questions and try to figure out how to make this different expression of what I do believe is a variant of the same faith, although there's certainly differences, but a variant of the same faith to something I think is not only more true, but more beautiful and more effective in grounding me in the beauty of the story of what it is to be a Christian. What is the point of Jesus? What is the point of the Torah and all of these things that come before it? And there is a difference in finally feeling like I'm a part of it as opposed to an explorer into it. I've talked about this before, and I talk about Orthodoxy a lot because I don't love to be an expert on things. I don't like to pretend I'm an expert on things that I shouldn't be, but I am an expert in my own experience. I'm probably the only expert in my own experience, and so it becomes easier for me to talk confidently about my experiences within something than to tell you how it is for all people in all times. But yeah, for me, when it came to Orthodoxy in my first service, it was just this very weird feeling where I went in actually expecting not to like it, but after attending the service, just getting this sense of something really true, of something really beautiful, and after asking a couple questions, having this peace in my spirit where the questions just settled. And they sat with me in a way that nothing else did. And probably a couple days after that happened, I had a manic episode, which if anybody suffers with mania or any kind of mental health, there's always this part of you that when you experience those things, not only are other people questioning whether your actions and your behaviors are adding up and affecting that, but you're asking those questions yourself because there are times where your whole personality gets heightened and there is this inhibition where you do things you wouldn't normally do. And so it took me a long time to poke and prod and try to understand, why is it that I'm drawn to this thing? Is it a real sense of something true, or is this some manic overspill? And I feel grateful to be almost 3 years into it and feel like there was something more than just this feeling coming from a mental instability. But and that was the thing, I never felt manic before that, but I did slip into sort of this mania right after. And I could talk a lot about that. That might be a story for another time, but there was just this difference in the way that those two things sort of possessed me, in the way that it changed the way that I thought and my patterns. And I'm just very lucky to be past here and feel like there is a sense of peace and truth and calm in this participation that I felt in nothing else. And in fact, when I've struggled with feelings of mania since, it almost grounded me in a way that nothing else did. And so there's just this this gratefulness to have found this thing that still reflects so many of the things that I believed when I was a Protestant, but sort of put it in a place that feels like it tells a better story and a better narrative. And that's there's no words to kind of describe what that feels like. But it's always so weird too, because now it just really changes the way that I see and look at things, and how I interact with that with my family, which they certainly have some skepticism, but they've been very gracious with my transition into an Orthodox lifestyle, and actually very inquisitive and asking good questions that help me think. And so that's been a challenge, but a lovely thing too. So where to go from here? I don't know. I mean, I think for me that kind of reflects a lot of the things that I'm thinking and the way that I am feeling about this holiday. I mean, outside of that, I think I've seen a lot of other people too who are ex-religious people expressing the ways that they see Easter and how it sort of lost this connection to them as something important. I think for a lot of people that can be really emotional, because I think most people who find themselves in the ex-religious camp or organized religion camp, there's a sense of loss or hurt that comes with that, and trying to reframe that. And I'm sure for a lot of people there's a lot of questioning of the choice to move to that. And so I can sympathize with that sort of negative exposure, or what's the word? Not instinct, but I can't think of the word, but that reaction to this holiday that is highly religious, more so than I think Christmas comes off in the U.S. And I hope that there's a way to kind of balance that, and I hope that you find a way to reclaim some of the good things that you had from that participation, even if you can't identify with those things now, or you have a lot of questions. And I hope that as you continue on your journey and your path to those things, you find ways to have productive conversations about the way these holidays affect you and what they mean. And I hope maybe the Eastern frame of this version of life and death might be able to help you in your organization of where to put that in the categories. Because I think for me, I look at kind of all these different worldviews. There is always this positive attribution to life and this negative association with death. And we want to have life in our world, whatever that means. And so if we can find ways to allow this holiday that maybe we can't believe in, full stop, or have issues with the organization where we are now, we can still help that remind us of what does it mean to overcome death, and how can we embrace life in the ways we can understand it now, and let that shape us and move us towards something more beautiful and more joyful. I think that's it. I hope this made sense. I feel like lately I've been doing a lot of rambling in my videos, and sometimes I think that's helpful so I don't get too caught up in my head about what it is. And with this channel, I do want to continue the exploration in religion and big questions. And I don't think there's just one view and perception of all of those things. And I think through our willingness to share our own stories and participation, we can learn more about how other people think, and how other people think about these things, and how to put them in the frame of this bigger world that we live in. Because I think that's the best way to get to better answers about the things we believe. So thanks for listening. I hope you got something from it, and would love to continue a conversation, especially on holidays and what they mean, and how we can participate with them in whatever place we find ourselves. But with that, I will close with the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.